Okay, another Generational Gains episode with my son Carson and I, and excited to be here and share kind of some things and thoughts, I guess, that have come up in the last few weeks that I think everyone can relate to.
Yeah.
Carson and I, we try to bring to you just everyday kind of things that people ask us.
Yeah.
Also subjects that we find interesting. Hopefully you find interesting as well, from money to real estate to life to relationships. And I think obviously, as you all know, it's unique, hopefully, not just to us, but we do feel like it's unique that we're able to share as a father-son duo. So excited to share with you guys today. So today we wanted to talk about talk about the dreaded messages that we get, and I think also probably a lot of you get. Yeah. Now, just think about this. My question for you, Carson, and as we start this podcast, what in the last month, week, day, think about this. Like what are the kind of messages that you maybe have received that you hate receiving, or that you just think are annoying to get? Like, what are some annoying messages? Because the reason why I wanted to share this is because you and also I might fall in this boat once in a while. We might be those ones that are sending these annoying messages. And you might not think you're being annoying, but you potentially are. And I'll turn that on me. I might be that person too.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to start today's podcast with just asking that kind of question. In the last month, or week or day, is there a message that just annoys you the most, or is there a situation that might annoy you the most?
Yeah, it's hard. We all get texted every day, emailed every day from different people we're working with. And recently, there's messages where people are attacking me almost. Those messages I don't like. So for example, if an investor of mine reaches out saying, hey, money, I should have gotten an interest payment on X date, it didn't come, pissed at me for not sending interest on the right time, and having to diffuse the fire. Those are uncomfortable messages to get when people are upset with me personally. I hate that because I want to always treat people with the utmost respect and the best quality of service. So I hate when people have poor services to share with me, or poor experiences, or bad things I did. I hate those messages. But those are messages that help me learn and improve what I do. So,
but wait, hold on a second. But shouldn't they be messaging you if the payment's late? Like, I don't see why
they should.
But that being said, are you talking about something that you owe, or are you saying that, for example, someone bought into an insurance, into infinite banking, and something didn't go as planned, and so therefore they're yelling at you when really it was Mass Mutual or insurance carrier? Which example are you sharing? Because there's a big difference.
Yeah, no, both. So, if I have a real estate investor who's investing on a deal with me, and I make an interest payment back to them late, or the deal goes an extra month longer than expected, they get their money back a month late, those are the clients I'm talking about, who are not upset because they understand me, we have a relationship, but they're frustrated, and at me too a little bit, and I hate that because I want to make sure it's perfect so they continue to reinvest with me. But also on the inside of infinite banking, if someone sets up a policy and it goes through, they fund it, and a month in, it's not what they expected, they didn't have as much money available to use as they thought they would, that would be my fault. I didn't maybe explain it to them well enough beforehand, and they're pissed at me because maybe they don't have access to as much money as they thought, and they had big plans they needed to use that money for. That's a big issue. Maybe it's the insurance company's fault, maybe it's mine, but those kind of issues always slip through the crack, I feel like. And there's things that always happen that aren't supposed to, but like I said, things kind of slip through the cracks sometimes with real estate, with raising money, with your own clients, of all sorts of stuff. So I guess that's what I've been thinking about the past month with different people sending messages that are not bad, but they make me feel bad because I should be doing better, if that makes sense.
It makes sense, but I'm going to be devil's advocate here, and you can give it back to me.
Yeah.
But both of your examples you gave to me seem like they're fair examples, and
they're normal,
and they shouldn't annoy you. Maybe they should annoy you in an effort to change it. So I would actually say that those messages are totally viable. So if that's the case and they're annoying to you, what have you learned and how do you fix that for the future so it doesn't happen? Because those examples seem like they're fair examples that people should be messaging you. If you're late, you're late.
Yeah.
So and if the expectation is that the insurance company's going to do something and they don't, you're the one that sold the policy. So I feel like so how do you get ahead of that so you don't get those messages in the future?
Well, the first thing that comes to my mind is under promising, over delivering. That's something I've had to focus on, and not saying all the greatest things are going to happen. The real estate deal is going to happen in 3 months. We're stoked. It's going to be a great deal. Things always happen. So I shouldn't be pushing the best possible option. I should be saying realistically what's going to happen and realistically what's the return. And then if the deal does go the way I think, I'll be over delivering. And so it's made me be more conservative and I guess less flashy, you can say, with maybe the investors I'm working with or the clients I'm working with. But yeah, I mean, that's what I've been trying to work on.
Well, I would say you surprised me with your example that you shared. So I just want to talk about it for a minute, since many of you that might be listening also are in a place where you might be on either side of what he just said. You could be in a side of where you're like, hey, where the F is my money? You said it's going to be the 5th of every month and it's the 10th.
Yeah.
So I can tell you from my experience raising and helping raise over $1 billion in real estate, that the way I would do is a lot of times I was on the broker side, meaning I found the money and I connected them with the deal.
Yeah.
And our job was mostly complete after that, but that we weren't complete. What would happen, in kind of an example, is the borrower would stop making payments or he was late.
Yeah.
So what would happen is the investors would call me because they have my number and they're like, hey, where's my payment? and that
it wasn't your fault.
It wasn't my fault.
Yeah.
But that being said, I took the heat. And even to this day, that's why I would say in the example you gave, I hate those phone calls from those investors only because it's the effing borrowers who make me look bad.
Yeah.
Or the insurance company that makes you look bad.
Yep.
And so my frustration would come from when I got those phone calls. And I guess I'm trying to share with you here right now that the investor phone call, 9 times out of 10, the investor's right. Now, are they overreacting? Possibly, but their $100 or $10,000 or $1 million could be all that they have.
Yeah.
Even if it's $100.
Yeah.
And so you have to treat every client as it's their most important money. And so it weighed on me a lot. And it's also why I don't really raise money anymore. Because of the pressures of what would happen when I would raise money and these borrowers would stop making payments. I had borrowers not only be late on payments, but stop making payments altogether. And then they would say, if you want to file default and foreclose on the property, I'll just file bankruptcy and I'll string this out for 2 years. And so then I have got to call investors to be like, well, and the investors are like, hey, he hasn't made payments for 3 months. So why aren't you filing a default and putting him in the foreclosure? Which is what 101 in your books that you read say, hey, if someone stops making payments, file default and go to foreclosure. Well, what many of you might not know is when they stop making payments in certain states, judicial kind of states, you can't just file foreclosure and take the property back. It goes through this whole process that could take literally years. And the borrowers know that. So they can be like, I'm figuring it out. Give me time. And if you want to take it back, I'm going to fight you and I'll file bankruptcy. And so all of a sudden I got investors pissed off, as they should be.
How often did this happen?
This happened at least every 3 or 4 months.
No way.
So you see why I got these gray hairs right here? So
that's bad.
So
that's worse than I was going to share.
Yeah. So, well, I'm sharing this with you because I think one thing that I wish I would have learned, and I'm teaching you now, and hopefully you're listening too as you listen to this podcast, is not only setting the expectations right with the investors, but also really explaining to them what happens if a problem occurs.
Explaining the risk too.
Explaining it really well, and so they can make their own decisions. And look, I feel like I did a pretty good job of that always. But the problem I had is I typically trusted these borrowers.
Yeah.
That they were going to do what they said they're going to do. And they also signed personal guarantees. So anyways, I'm going on a tangent here right now, but I feel like this is a really good lesson to talk about. Is setting expectations for your investors. And so they understand it. And also, like, even when you're selling the life insurance policies, that they understand, like, hey, look, it ranges. Anywhere from 80 to 95% you'll have a liquidity, even though they want to hear it's 95%.
Yeah.
That's in fact all they hear. And so for me, I think the most annoying thing for me is when I feel like I do a great job sharing all that. And I also let them know, like, hey, look, the payments are going to be going out the 5th of every month. Yeah. But sometimes they're going to be the 15th. And I'll explain that to them. Like, sometimes borrowers make their payments late because they can, right? Because every payment that people have is typically due on the 1st or the 5th, let's say, of the month. But inside their contract, they have usually 5 to 10 days of grace period. Yeah. Which means they technically don't have to pay to like the 15th. Yeah. So when you call me on the 12th or 13th and the borrower is just about to make their payment, that's what gets frustrating to me is like, you know that they could be late. Yeah. It's real estate. Yeah. And any real estate is not perfect. In fact, I expect almost all real estate deals to either go long or take more time,
or money,
and money. And so it doesn't mean real estate's bad. It just means that it is real estate. And so the market changes, as we all see. The stock market changes, so does real estate. Now, I just feel like real estate, when it changes like this. The stock market, I feel like, goes like this. But when real estate changes, it's like, oh, it's not going to pay off this month. It's going to pay off in 3 months. Cool. So that's a flat line. Maybe not so good. Yeah. But little things change in the real estate market typically don't create these big volatile things. And so, anyway, so your frustrations that you hear, which are valid, by the way,
they are valid.
Take them away. Yeah. Are valid also from the investor standpoint. So, it is, in my opinion, your job, when you're talking to investors, that wherever the money's going, to keep those people accountable. Insurance carriers, borrowers, business partners.
And that's the hardest part, because that's what I've noticed, the hardest part, because I care about the deal so much, they might not. The person you're working with, the partner you have, the person you're handing them off to, they might not care as much as you do. And so you can't control them, but you have to work with people you trust. And that's something you have to learn too.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's a good example.
So no, that's a great conversation. So for you then, what texts or messages have you got in the past couple weeks that have been frustrating for you? It's messages you did not want to receive.
There's 2 I can think of. Okay. The first one's an easy one. It's fresh off the press. Someone who I haven't spoken to in years, maybe at least a year. And when I say spoken to, I mean a text message from, who said, "Hey, how's it going? Do you have any extra seats in your suite for the Super Bowl?" Okay, that's an aggressive message. So I would say that those kind of messages, when people ask for things, or like, hey, like, I almost like to respond with, "Who dis?" Like what? Like, this is so
that's funny.
Those are like some fun. I get those like during the football season often. Like, hey, it's like. Well, and I think most people think that we got the suite so we can, for business. I think people think that we have a suite at the Raider Stadium so we could go for business, and they don't realize that I got a family of like 8, and we use all of our tickets. We got the suite for us to go to. So that's probably number 1.
That's funny.
But number 2,
and I get messages like that sometimes. Hey, does your dad have seats open in the suite for the Jets game? I get texts like that sometimes too, which is funny.
Yeah, I mean, look, if it's someone that I have a relationship with, and as you know, there's several games where you can't go. Yeah. I always go. But like Cash or Cole can't go, and then there's openings. So anyways, for you close friends of ours, it's okay. You can message us. We would probably say no, not because we don't love you or don't want you to come. It's probably because we're all using the tickets. But obviously, messages first before the game, like try to build that relationship. But that's kind of the funny message. I would say the thing that comes to mind that I don't love, and I think is kind of annoying, is the message that says, "Hey, I found a deal. I'm looking for money, and it closes in 5 days.
You're the last resort.
It's a hard message and a frustrating message, because I also get this message from people that I know and trust and like. It doesn't mean I don't love and like you by any means, but I can tell you that it's frustrating because of my experience that deals do take longer and have problems.
Yeah.
I'm much slower now to look at deals or refer them to somebody to look at. And so so get ahead of the game. If you're looking for money for a deal or for a business transaction, you should be asking weeks or months ahead in advance, and asking multiple individuals or entities or companies, 3, 4, 5 days out puts me or anyone else kind of in an uncomfortable position. In fact, most likely it's going to cost you a lot more money too, because you got to get it done so quickly.
Yeah.
And I always say, look, if the deal has to close in 5 days, you don't have the time to do due diligence, say no. No is probably the better answer, because you'll find your next yes where you have time to do due diligence.
So it makes me think about a previous podcast we did about raising money. We talked about that scenario of constantly raising money every day, having your whiteboard of people you've talked to, money they'd want to invest, and just having their information so you can always fall back on. And so from the perspective of them trying to ask you for money, they could have done this better by taking time, like you kind of said, of weeks, months in advance to prepare to know who they can ask for money from, how much they'd want to invest, what returns they want, what they prefer, so that when you do ask 5 days in advance, you've already been talking them up for 2-3 months and you know exactly what they'd want to invest in. So you're going to bring this deal to them. Some people come probably to you and have a deal that wouldn't even make sense with you. Even if you had months to underwrite or review, you wouldn't care less about the deal because it's not the markets you like, not the money you want to lend. And so if they didn't do their due diligence on you. And so from an investor or real estate investor standpoint, coming to raise money from people, they have to be doing due diligence beforehand too, and knowing who they're investing with, trusting who they work with. And that comes back to the conversation I was having about, or you talked about with like your broker, you being the broker in the scenario, and having people you had to trust who sometimes didn't do their job right. Well, you could have done more due diligence with them and the people you work with and your investors, and so that it all worked out better. And same with people coming to you with money, with deals looking for money. They could be doing more due diligence on you, other investors, their deal, everything. Almost even having days or even an employee who does that for you, finding money for you, maybe spending all their time doing due diligence, building relationships, because you can't do that yourself for every deal, every investment. It's too difficult. So having a team also is important for making sure you do things right.
Yeah, look, I would say the one thing that I learned late, I shouldn't say one, but one of the many things I learned late on is the importance of communication. Having somebody on your team be the communicator. Like we hire somebody to once every other week sit with us, partners, and just hear us talk about the current deals and what just the updates on them. Because then that person knew real time what was going on, so they could then inform clients when they called in of updates and stuff. And also they could put out emails with summaries,
newsletters.
So I'd say one of the best things to do is constant communication, and it's one of the things that I think people have appreciated about me over time is I've been involved with great deals, good deals, and bad deals. And again, most of them, I would say 90% of the deals I was involved with were not my deals. I helped raise money for them. But these people would call me when there was problems. Yeah. And I called everyone back every time, even if I had no answers for them. And those were the hard phone calls, because they would call and be like, hey, it's been 2 months. Do you have an update? And I call back and I'd say, don't have an update. We've done this, and this. Yeah. But we still don't have an update.
That's hard.
So those are probably the harder conversations. Look, I would just say that my advice to anybody, if you're out there raising money or talking to people with money, or don't want to have the annoying phone calls, which is kind of, this actually segment went to a whole different direction. We were going to talk about annoying calls when, in fact, I think now we talked about like those annoying calls are probably valid calls.
Yeah.
So how do we avoid getting them?
Yeah.
And the answer is over communicate. And if that means you have a person on your team that communicates, if that means you have to take the escalation calls, so for me in my company, there's a level of command, but if we ever get a bad review, I mean, it is immediately escalated. We get 20 to 30 new reviews every single week at our company. And if we get a bad one, which happens probably once a month, it just happens, right? We're opening up 120 to 130 new accounts every single month.
Yeah.
We call, and sometimes we can resolve it. Most times, sometimes we can't. In fact, there's one guy that mentioned my name. Had nothing to do, and the review had nothing to do. It was very confusing. So I tried to call him, hasn't called me back. That's annoying.
Yeah.
But look, everyone's got their reason. So Jess likes to say like there's three sides of the truth, right? Like my side, your side, and what the real truth is.
Yeah.
And so what anyone's feeling is what they're feeling. It doesn't mean it's not true. It's their perception. So it's our job to communicate the best that we can. And even if we have no new updates, no new information, that's advice probably I give you today is when you get these calls, over communicate in the beginning and work through it. So anyways.
That made me think of one more thing too. From the perspective of me being a client for other people and the perspective of me having clients, I hate when clients lie or don't respond or don't give you the full truth, because it screws up how we communicate with them, and it makes it difficult to provide them the best experience and personalize every situation for them because they didn't tell us everything going on. I have people all the time who set up insurance policies who right before about to start, they're like, oh yeah, and all this money doesn't come for 6 more months. Or, oh, this money's actually in probate for my mother passing away. I can't access it anymore. Or, the things like that. It's like, well, why didn't you tell me that from the beginning? And we would have done the whole thing differently. Things like that happen all the time. And so I'm guilty of that too. When I, first started working with the bookkeeper, I wouldn't tell them everything I had going on, and they would be asking me about things, and I would just be too short and lazy to give them a full, truthful response and just be quick about it. And it ended up hurting us because they had different things than I wanted. So from the perspective of both the client and the I guess, owner, or what would you even call that? It has to be over communicate and being as truthful as possible. Yeah. It's huge. So I learned a lot today. Most of the time in our podcast, it's both of us contributing. Sometimes it's mainly me. Today it was mainly you. You had a lot of great thoughts for me. So I appreciate it. I learned a lot. And so we always end with sweet, sour, and service on our episodes. I can go first. I'll start with my service today. Today I came over here. We're filming this at his house, by the way. I don't know if we're supposed to share that, but We're out in the front. And I came here and they were coming in, bringing in groceries. So I came and helped him bring everything in for them.
Wow, is that why you rushed to do it so quick?
It is. I forgot to have a service for you guys. So that was good. And Jess was holding the baby, trying to carry some stuff, so I helped her. Sweet and sour. Sweet is... my sweet for the week's probably been having more time to focus on my operations, my time management, how I do things. I've had more time to focus on and just reflect on what I'm doing with all my different work and try and just optimize things. So that's been good. And sour is probably... I don't know. I don't get a lot of sours. I feel like I try and be positive. I don't think about it too much. I don't got nothing for you this time.
I'll take it. No sours is good. Since we got to wrap up, I'll go real quick. My sweet was the baby has 2 teeth. My little one now has 2 teeth. It's exciting. And the sour was I didn't get to see all you kids this last week because we were out a little bit, and then it was just a busy week. So that's definitely a sour. And service is what did I do to serve today? Well, I know. I cooked breakfast for the family this morning. So that was my service. Hope you enjoyed today's session and you learned something.
Thanks for watching, guys.
Have a good day.